What's up everyone, welcome to another episode. Today is finally the day where we're going to be building up the long-awaited titanium frame. And yeah, it's actually going to be quite a special build because I'm going to be installing a bunch of components which have never been here on this channel so far. So yeah, I'm very excited to get my hands on them. So let's quickly talk about what's going to be on the menu for this frame. First of all, there's going to be a new SRAM Red eTap group set. So nice wireless shifting, completely wireless. So it's the first time that I'm going to be installing a SRAM group set, so very excited about that. Then when it comes to the crankset, there's going to be a super lightweight carbon crankset from a company called SRAM. And for the handlebars, there's going to be a super lightweight Avian Canary fully integrated handlebar, fully integrated cockpit, which is supposed to be super light, but we're also going to drop it on the scale later on. Then now you see a cheap AliExpress copy carbon seat post here. I only mounted this so I can clamp it properly without really worrying too much about it. But this one is also going to be replaced with an ultralight Darimo seat post. So let's see how light we can get this bike, given that the frame itself is around 1800 grams, so very similar and comparable to my Standard Triebwerk steel frame, which I absolutely love. But yeah, let's see where we're gonna end up weight-wise with this beauty. So that's enough talking, let's get started. First step, as with all my other build videos, it is gonna be about the fork and actually cutting the fork to length. I'm gonna be, as always, slamming this, as this is a custom frame, so I wanna go as low as always. I might have gone as low as possible, even if it wouldn't be custom, as you might know from my other videos. But yeah, so far it's kind of okay in my back. Anyways, so now we're gonna quickly just fit the fork in, put the handlebars on, assemble everything so we can mark where we have to cut it. Before this, there is, you see there is a flat surface, but what actually comes with the frame and the fork is the so-called crown race. So you basically just put it on top and push it all the way down. And this is actually gonna nicely, sit the lower bearing in place. So now you can basically have that bearing sitting on here without it floating around anywhere. So this frame has been designed around an FSA 55R, I think is the headset that's called. So it's all nicely integrated. So it basically also comes with a nice bearing that's just sitting perfectly in here. But what I really wanted to do is I wanted to have a nice fully integrated cockpit. So I got this super light Avian handlebar, but it also needed to be made FSA compatible. And what you can select there, I actually bought this off Panda Podium, and you can actually select different spacers that go underneath here for proper integration. And I selected, of course, one that is FSA compatible. And it is a very nicely 3D printed piece that hopefully now is going to make everything look very integrated. So let's quickly try to assemble it, and then we can mark where we actually have to make the cut to the fork. So first of all, I'm going to install this little cable guide in here. Go. Then on top of that goes the regular FSA headset cover with the opening for the cables to the front, which it doesn't really matter that much at the moment. Then we're going to take the 3D printed spacer, mount this on top, click it into place. Perfect. Now I'm going to take my fork and navigate it through all of this. Let's see if that's going to work out. Yes, that's looking good. All right, and now I'm going to place the handlebar on top of all of this and hope that it locks in nicely. Slide it in place. All right, so I would say, what do you think? I think it integrates quite nicely. So let's see where we got to make the cut. As always, so for viewers that are watching or have watched a couple of my other bike build videos, so now I'm going to be marking the height on the fork, where it basically is flush with the lowest part here of the handlebar. And yeah, from there we're gonna have to compensate a little bit for the expander plug, but I'll show you in a second. So now let's quickly make that marking. All right, so I made a nice mark here. Let's see if we're still gonna see it once I pull this out. And yeah, we can still see the marked height on the fork. So now let me quickly show you what I meant when I said that we need to compensate a little bit for the expander plug. When you look at where this initial cutting point was, when once it's cut, we basically also insert this little expander plug. And as you see, it is adding, I would say, around 2 millimeters on top of everything. So when I look at this line, now when I'm going to be cutting, I need to subtract at least those 2 millimeters. I'd rather going to be 3 or 3.5, because once everything is going to be compressed, everything is going to get pulled up a little bit, because it is going to be compressing. And yeah, we need to accommodate for that. So yeah, let me quickly take this outside, do the cut. It is already dark outside because it is 9 p.m. So I'm not going to be filming how I'm cutting it, but I'm going to link here or here one of my other build videos where you see the beautiful process of cutting a fork. So feel free to quickly go there, check it out if you're super interested. Otherwise, I'll see you back in a second with a cut fork. All right, so I'm back from fork cutting, and yeah, let's give it a try if it actually is gonna fit. So I'm gonna put in that compression bolt or expander plug, actually. Let me expand this here real quick a little bit. We're gonna add the bearing. Slot this one in. You also need the other bearing on top of here. Then we need that little cable protector / cable guide for the internally routed cables. Then we put the cover on top. Then the proprietary spacer. Lock it in. And then the handlebar on top of here. Make sure it goes in place. And that looks pretty perfect. Let me get you close so that you see what target height we've been looking for. All right, so now you see that there's still quite a little bit of space here to actually be pulled up. So we later on gonna be placing that top cover on here and actually screwing that bolt in, which then is actually gonna compress everything in here. So yeah, basically that space that we just looked at here is going to get reduced. So we just need to make sure that that fork is not going to be touching against the top plate, but that there is a little bit of buffer in here to actually compress everything down. But yeah, looks good. Let's continue. All right, so now let me take this off again, and then we can actually start routing. I would say we start with the brakes. They're going to go through the fork, and then also from all the way back through the down tube up into this head tube. So yeah, basically what we're looking for is for all those brake hoses to pop out here, and then we can start routing them through the handlebar, which normally isn't that much fun, but I mean, at least now it is a SRAM group set, so it's actually only going to be the brake hoses, no Di2 cables coming through. And yeah, I think that this handlebar actually has quite nice openings on the bottom, so let's see, maybe it's going to be smooth sailing. So next up, we're going to be mounting the brakes, and as this is the first time that I'm installing a SRAM system with DOT braking fluid, which I heard is not so friendly to you and your skin in comparison to mineral oil, which is why I got my nice gloves on. So let me quickly get the brakes, and then we start routing them basically here from the back all the way up the down tube, and hope that they're easily gonna pop out up here in the head tube. And then we're gonna do the same thing with the front brakes going through the fork. So let's start with the rear. Here we got the nice SRAM Red rear brake with yeah, the open hose that I'm now gonna try to thread through here. Hope that it's gonna pop out in the bottom bracket area. That should be rather straightforward, I hope. Okay, it is touching somewhere. I mean, there's the weld here, so you have a thick tube hitting a smaller tube opening. So there are definitely areas where it could get stuck. I mean, if this doesn't work, I'm gonna use my cable routing tool. I'm gonna use this little cable routing kit. So there's basically this cable with a little magnet on the side, and then there's this counterpart which also has a magnet on the side, which kind of helps to navigate it through the frame. And then on the other end of that cable, there is this little thread adapter, which yeah, I'm gonna screw into the brake hose, and then I can basically just pull it all the way through. So enough talking, let me quickly show you how it works. I'll take the magnet part in here, and you can see that I can connect to it through the frame and then just fish it out here. There's another magnet on this, yeah, on the other side. That is good to get into those smaller openings. There we go. And we got the cable piped through here. So now we can actually go all the way, also all the way to the down tube, so that we can pull that cable in one go all the way up into the head tube. So I'm quickly gonna do that. So push the magnet in here, and then keep on pushing that wire through here. Lost it, let's find it again. There it is. Keep pushing. There we go. So now it's here already at the head tube. Let me try to fish it out. There we go. So I have it down here. I actually want to have it pop out up here. There we go. So we got the cable threaded or guided all the way through. So now I'm going to attach the brake hose to this little adapter here, and then we're just going to hopefully just pull it through. So now I'm taking this brake hose and this little cable end. All right, so it requires a little bit of force to initially push it in, and then you can just screw the adapter in here. All right, so now that's nicely attached to the brake hose. Now let's see, I'm going to be pulling on that wire here, guiding the cable through here. Keep pushing and pulling a little bit so we can guide it through the opening here. Well, not as easy as I would have hoped. Let's see if I can guide it. Yes, now it's through there. We can keep on pulling it up the down tube. Push and pull. There we go. So I'll pull it all the way through. All right. So that's looking good. So I'm just gonna briefly attach it with the two screws to here, to the frame, so that it's not moving around too much. So actually, before I mount the rear brake, you see that there is this little adapter here, and this is for the case in case you want to be mounting a 160mm rotor in the back. But what I'm actually going to be doing, I'm going to have a 140mm rotor in the back and 160 in the front. So I quickly need to remove this adapter, and then we're basically just going to attach it directly to the frame. So let me quickly remove this adapter plate. There we go. The Groupset actually came with two very nice, I think, titanium screws, because they're super, super light. And we're not threading in these bolts all the way, because once we mounted the wheels, we will have to center it anyways. So we want this to be able to move around. So that's good for now. So as this cable is now going all the way to the down tube, there's a high chance that when you're riding on uneven surfaces, all through bumps, that this is going to be thrown around a little bit and yeah, create that noise. So what I'm going to do, there are these little foam tubes that you can put on top of the brake hose, which are going to be dampening any contacts with the down tube. So I'm quickly going to remove this little guiding cable, and now I'm going to basically just thread this little foam cover on top of the brake hose. All right, that looks good. You can even leave a little bit in the head tube, because I mean, there's also metal up here, so they can also be rattling here. I think now this is looking good. So now front brake, in the best case scenario, I'm gonna be able to just push in the brake hose through that opening here and have it pop up up here. This is a little bit depending on the manufacturing of the fork. With some it's very easy going, with others I'll have to get out the routing tool. But yeah, let's first try to just push it through and see what happens. Is it gonna just pop out here or not? Oh, I can see it. I can see it, but it's not coming out directly. It is right there at the opening, so let me get something pointy to fish it out. Let me try to fish it out with this. There we go. That was fairly easy. So now with the cable popping up here, I'm just gonna push it all the way through, up to the point where the brake is gonna be aligning with the openings on the fork. And now let me just quickly get the screws. And then of course, also just in case, it also says it on this little adapter that's underneath here. If you have the adapter mounted the way that that the brakes come, or that the Groupset comes, it is set up for a 160mm rotor. If you, for whatever reason, decide that you actually only want a 140mm rotor on the front, you can of course do this. You would just have to unscrew the actual brake from this adapter, flip the adapter plate around, and then mount the brake back onto it again, and that will allow you to mount a 140mm rotor on the front if you're like super hardcore weight weenie and want to save those 20 grams. So let me tighten up those screws just a little bit, that they don't fall out. But again, like in the rear, we don't want these to be super tight because we need the brake to be able to move around still. All right, and brake still moving around, so we can still center it nicely later. Okay, so it is about time to assemble the front of the bike with getting the fork in and getting the handlebar set up and everything. But now, very, very important in the beginning is to grease all those new contact points here. So I'm gonna take a bunch of grease and spread it here across where the lower bearing is gonna be sitting. And don't worry too much if you're making a mess here now, because we're gonna be cleaning everything afterwards. But what we do want to do with this grease is just prevent any water going further up into the system. But then also we need to add a little bit of grease underneath the bearing on top of that crown race here. So I'm also going to add a bunch of grease down here. It's not so easy to do this elegantly, you know, on camera. Otherwise I would be just doing this on the floor, sitting down or leaning this against something. But everything for the entertainment, you know? And then we also have to do the same thing up here, because there's going to be another bearing sitting up here. So let's also apply some grease up here. Good. So I would say that we're ready to give it a try putting all of this together. All right, so let's get started. So now I'm going to first take the brake hose and push it all the way through here. Fit in the fork. There we go. That is looking good. And now when it comes to the brake hoses, as this shorter one is for the front brakes, so that's going to be your left hand shifter. So we also want to make sure that we move this hose to the left hand side and have the hose for the rear running to the right hand side. So now next thing is we're going to be adding the top bearing here. So we need to fill this through those hoses as well. So sorry if that's off camera now, but I'm just filling that brake hose through here, and then also the front brake hose as well. And now we can place the bearing where it belongs, up here. So now comes this little cable guide / cable protector. We're gonna put this on top here. And now, as I said, let's make sure that the front brake hose is located rather towards the left-hand side. There we go. So that's looking good. And now I'm going to be taking the headset cover and already the dedicated spacer, because I'll need to fiddle those brake hoses through that opening here, so I can do it with both at the same time. Sorry that this is off camera, but you'll see it in a second. There we go. So I fitted the hoses through the front openings, and now I'm just gonna place that headset cover properly on that cable protector underneath it. So that is looking good. So in theory now we could already be putting on the handlebars, but of course we still need to guide those two hoses through the handlebars. So let me just quickly attach the fork with a little bit of tape or Velcro, depending on what I'm gonna find, and then we're gonna start routing the hoses through the handlebar, and then we can put everything nicely together. All right, so now it's time to route the wires or the hoses through the handlebars. So the hoses now need to enter here and then basically through the handlebar, go here past this hole and then pop out here or here on the other side. So yeah, I'm gonna first try to just push them into their place. Let's see if this is gonna work. If not, I'm just gonna use my cable routing kit again, which should make, yeah, this is a pretty straightforward task. All right, so front brake hose first. Just need to make sure that it catches the right angle here. There we go. All right, so this came out here quite nicely. Okay, now let's do the same thing with the other side. Let's see if it's gonna be as simple as that. If it is, this is going to be an exceptional handlebar. Pushed it in already quite a bit, and I can also already see it here. So let me get my tool again. Almost. I'm sure this looks great from an observer's perspective, huh? You know what? I'm going to use the cable routing kit just for the sake of showing you how it can be done, in case you're running into issues, because I wouldn't need it. So for the cable routing kit, I'm going to take the brake hose and I'm going to screw in this little adapter again. Now just detached from the wire. It's going to make it a little bit easier to thread it in. Now I can actually take the end of the cable routing tool and screw it in here. There we go, that should be good enough. So let's straighten out this wire. All right. And I'm already here at the end. I can see it and I can fish it out with this longer piece. Yeah, say I can fish it out, but I think I've seen it. There it is. Fantastic. And now we can hopefully just push and pull the whole thing through. Let's give it a try. Push and pull. You already see it popping out here. There we go. That is looking really good. That does look pretty good. So now we're already very close to assembling everything up here in the front. So I'll be able to take that beautiful tape that I installed down here for security reasons off. And then we're going to be tightening those screws a little bit around the handlebars just to yeah, to fix everything in place that it doesn't fall apart, but not to final specification just yet. Okay, so I would say let's push these things together. Let me take that tape off here so that we can push everything up. Let's make sure that this hose protector is in the right place, that the headset cover is in the right place. And now we just push everything in here. That looks good. There's still a little bit of a tiny gap here between the head tube and the headset cover, but this one should get yeah, down to a minimum, still without touching, of course, once we compress everything down. So let's expand the expander plug. There we go. Let me just check with the torque wrench. Just set this to 5 Newton meters for now. So now let's tighten the expander plug, or expand the expander plug a little bit. I'm going to 5 Newton meters here. Okay. Now we can take the top cap, put it on here. But let's compress it already a little bit. Yeah, and I can see already that that gap here in the front is getting smaller now to a really nice space. So this looks good. Let's keep it like that for now. And I would say Later on, we'll be able to tighten everything properly together. Of course, only once we aligned the handlebars to the front wheel and to the fork. All right, so now that we get that done, let's get to installing the shifters and then actually connecting those brake hoses into the shifters. And yeah, then we take it from there. Let's start with the right-hand shifter. I've once seen somebody actually sticking their tool through the rubber hood this way and then getting this way to the clamp rather than opening it up and trying to get somewhere in here, like with an angle. And I actually, just off camera, I gave that a try, and there's actually a nice way where you can basically just push in that tool here. You need to find that little screw that's tightening up this little this little mount here, where you can like loosen it up and tighten it down a little bit more comfortable than going through here. So let me now quickly mount this one. So it's gonna go on here. So here we also have a little bit of rough texture, which is kind of nice, which helps the brake lever to grip a little bit better. And as it has an absolute ending and starting point, which should be symmetrical on the other side, it also gives us a nice indication on where to position the brake lever and to be at the very same position as on the other side. I'm gonna mount it almost all the way up, but basically it's intersecting here at the very back. Let me tighten up that bolt a little bit. Not all the way just yet, because we're still going to be aligning them like finally once everything is set up in regards to the angle and stuff, but just to make sure that it's not moving around too much. But I think this should be fine. So let me pull that one out. Let me see if that works, if that looks just about right, because we want a nice smooth transition between the handlebar and the brake lever, of course. But yeah, I'd say that looks good. Okay, so let's install the left hand shifter. So now I'm going to try to do this on camera. So we need to go with the tool in here to hit that bolt. So I'm going to pull back the rubber hood a little bit and try to find my way to the bolt. And I think I already got it. It just naturally somehow guides its way in there. So now we can pull back that cover a little bit. And now again, we're looking for this textured part and we're aligning it at the same position more or less of where we did it on the other side. Also, I'm doing it at this intersection of where the texture ends here at the end. And I'm just gonna tighten this down a little bit so that it doesn't move around. And that should be already good enough. Yeah. All right. We can pull that rubber hood back on top here. And I would say it's looking good. Okay, so now we're going to be installing the brake hoses into the shifters, which is going to be a first for me on a SRAM setup. I mean, I've done it multiple times on the Shimano system and on the L2 ERX, which is a very similar kind of setup. Here it is a little bit different. Maybe it is actually a little bit more straightforward than on the Shimano system, because we're going to be cutting the hoses to length, so that's nothing new. But then there's also going to be this pin, which on the Shimano and on the L2 system you have to like press in with another tool. Here, this one has a little thread on it and a little hex opening, so that you can, it also comes with a little tool. So you basically just put this in and then you just screw it actually into the brake hose rather than pushing it in, which I think is pretty smart because it doesn't require another tool. Then, I don't know if you watch my other videos, you also know that there is a so-called olive going on top of the brake hose that then gets crushed and expands pretty much through the compression and creates this airtight seal that is basically just floating around on that brake hose on the Shimano system. But here, first of all, it's a nice red anodized one, so that's already kind of cool. And this one actually goes on top of this pin and it actually screws into place, which is a quite interesting approach. So now you know how this works. Let's see if I'm going to be able to pull this off at first try, because I only have one set of pins and olives. So if it doesn't work out, then I guess there's going to be a little bit of a delay to this project. But let's hope it's going to work out, because it's not that crazy of a complex situation, I think, at least for now. So let's go. Let's cut the hoses. we got the super long brake hose now here, and this one needs to go into this connector port. The cool thing now is with those handlebars is that we can also push a little bit of backup hose into the handlebars. So I would rather cut it like, I don't know, 5 millimeters, maybe too long, rather than trying to be perfect, just in case that we need a little bit of extra brake hose. It's also important to have a little bit of, a little bit of buffer in here when you're moving the handlebars to the extreme positions, because that of course also pulls on those brake hoses. So actually having a little bit of extra makes sense that it can still be pulled in. Otherwise, it's just going to be blocking your movement of your handlebars if you cut it too tight. So let me quickly cut it. To make a nice clean cut, you need a little extra tool. This one is from a company called Jaguar, and you see it is a little like mini guillotine. So you put the brake hose in here where you want to cut it, and then you compress it, and yeah, the guillotine gives you a really nice and even cut, and then you can basically easily screw in that pin or push in that pin on the Shimano system. So let's get to cutting. I push a little bit extra into the handlebars, and then I would say I'll cut it somewhere here. All right, we get the tool in place, and now compress it. Okay, so nice and clean cut. That's basically the side that's going into the bin, and yeah, that's easier to show me than the short one that's sticking out here now on camera. All right, so let's get things started. First of all, I'm gonna take this little nut out of here because this one needs to be screwed in later on. So we now need to actually put this onto the brake hose rather than having it sitting in here already. So I'm putting it on top of the brake hose. There you go. And now I'm taking this little pin and actually trying to screw it in, first by hand, just a little bit, that it gets stuck in there. And now let's thread it in. So far, so good, I'd say. All right, that looks pretty good. Okay, nice and clean. Now I'm gonna take this little olive and also just place it on here. And this one has a reverse thread, so you thread it in counterclockwise. Okay, and it says to thread it in until it's either flush or 0.5 millimeter in. So let's say this looks pretty good. You see that the pin is only sticking out a tiny bit, so it is definitely between 0.5 millimeter and flush. So I'd say that is good. Now the big moment's gonna come where we're gonna actually insert this into the shifter. Let's push this back and push this into the shifter. That's looking good. And let's also thread in that little nut already. Let's see if we can thread it in by hand at least a little bit. Because the nice thing is, if you're threading things in by hand, at least in the beginning, you really make sure that you're not cross-threading anything, which is very important. Okay, I think it is already in just that tiny bit, yeah. So now we can actually take the wrenches and start tightening it up a little bit. We also want to make sure that the cable is pushed all the way in as far as we can. And then keep on tightening that bolt, or that nut, sorry. Okay, so now when I'm turning this, the adapter is also turning, so we need to grab the adapter with another spanner. This is a size 10 now. It says to tighten it to 8 Newton meters. Unfortunately, I don't really have a torque wrench adapter for these kind of tools, so I'm just going to do it by feel. 8 Newton meters. I think I've tightened enough bolts around that area to know what feels safe, and I would assume that it is fairly close to what I was doing on the Shimano systems as well. So here again, let's make sure that that cable is all the way in. All right, I would say that that feels just about right. We need to make sure that the cable is in there, that we cannot actually pull it out. That kind of guarantees that that olive that we've seen in there got crushed, got compressed, so it's created this airtight seal around that port, and it's also nicely holding the brake hose in place. So I would say that looks pretty good. So now we're gonna do the same thing on the left-hand shifter. Again, here we can also push that a little bit extra in. Let me pull back the hood cover. There we go. And then I'm gonna cut it somewhere here. Get the little guillotine out. Okay. A little bit of oil dripping out because that system is already pre-filled with oil. So let me put that off to the side. Okay, and same game as on the other side. Let's take out that bolt from here because it needs to go onto the brake hose itself. There we go. And then I'm gonna take the little pin. I might actually be preferring this solution over the Shimano one because it doesn't need this compression tool, which is sometimes, if you have hoses that are that short, sometimes a little bit hard to position and to clamp the hose in. And then again, as on the other side, the olive goes on top of here and threads in counterclockwise. There we go, until it's either flush or just a little bit underneath, like here. So now we can take this and push it into the port all the way in. And now let's try to again just tighten that bolt, that nut first by hand. So don't get too frustrated if you're trying to do this and it doesn't work right away. As you see, same thing here. Okay, but I think now it is in. Yeah, that looks good. So let me get the spanners. So now, before properly compressing it, let's again make sure that the hose is all the way in, that we haven't pulled it out through all this moving around here. And again, around 8 Newton meters. All right, let's say that looks good. Let me see. Yeah, that hose is definitely sitting in tightly here. So I would say that this job's done. Now let's do a quick test. As this is a brand new system, the hoses and the levers, as well as the brakes themselves, have been already pre-filled with brake fluid. So they have been already very tight when you compress them here while they've been in the box. Of course, we have been cutting the hoses a little bit. There's been some spillage of oil here and there. So it could be that they need to be bled properly again, which is a process that I don't really love, but I would be interested in how it actually works with the SRAM system because I've never done it before. But of course, if I can save myself that trouble, I'm not going to say no to that. So now the big moment is going to be what happens if I compress these brake levers. Am I going to be able to push them all the way through, which means that I need to bleed them? Or am I already going to have resistance because there are those brake pad replacements in between the brake pads? So let's see, let's try this one first. Ooh, that looks good. Okay, so I think this one doesn't need to be bled. Let's try this one. I guess that saves us quite a big step, which is the disc brake bleed. But don't worry, I'm going to cover it in another video once the bike actually needs some proper bleeding, or once I have a little bit of more time, because there is a little bit of pressure on this build as I want to take it to a cycling vacation in Mallorca, which is coming up in a week from now. So and I definitely want to test ride it before then. So with all the work and stuff that's on my desk, I'm running a little bit short on time. So I'm very happy that that I can skip the disc brake bleeding. So now I would say let's continue with mounting the derailleurs and the bottom bracket. So let's start with the front derailleur. As this frame doesn't have a front derailleur mount welded onto the frame, which I actually kind of like, we need to install a little front derailleur clamp. And for this I'm using a ProCraft PRC, and it is a nice carbon clamp, which I'm already using on my Standard, and haven't had any issues with it, so I thought, why not give this a try on the titanium build as well. So let me quickly install this, and then we're gonna get the front derailleur on. So this should be a fairly easy job of just opening, bending it open without breaking it, and having it snap into place. There we go. That is looking good. So let's see, I mean, we'll be moving it up or down later on once we have the bottom bracket and the crankset installed, but for now we can now just attach the front derailleur right here in yeah, just a loose manner. For this I'm gonna take this beautiful SRAM Red front derailleur and take the black anodized titanium screw that came with it and mount it onto the clamp. And as I said, not to final torque. I mean, on here on the clamp it says maximum torque of 3 Newton meters because it is a carbon clamp. So we're gonna do this with the torque wrench in a second once we know exactly where we need to put it, but we're gonna get to that in a moment. So now we're going for the rear derailleur, as yeah, this is titanium here, and it is yeah, gonna have, I don't know what kind of metal screw being mounted in here. I read that you should be putting in some TI, titanium preparation grease in here, so that you don't get any bonding, chemical bonding between the metals. I mean, all the other bolts, like for example these ones that are holding the brakes in place, these are made out of titanium as well, so I guess that titanium on titanium isn't really an issue, but other metals on titanium I heard can be an issue. So rather than using regular grease, I'm gonna take this TI prep and put this in here. Okay, that is looking good. Now we can take this rear derailleur and just thread it onto here. That's looking good. Let's tighten it up. Yeah. There we go. Let's see. Looking good. Now it is time to install the bottom bracket. For the bottom bracket I'm using a T47 bottom bracket with external bearings, so something that I learned the hard way on previous project. There are external and internal T47 bottom brackets, and I'm using this one, which is from Standard, because yeah, my Standard Triebwerk came actually with one of those, and so far I'm quite happy with how smooth it is. Let's see in regards to longevity, but yeah, this is something I can always swap out later, and it is actually fairly priced at I think around 40 euros. So yeah, I just got one of those. So yeah, let's get this one in, and then let's also get that special Cybray carbon crankset installed. As now we again gonna have yeah, pure titanium on some other kind of metal. I'm again gonna use this Finish Line TI Prep grease just to be safe. And I also just noticed from the rear derailleur that yeah, it's not like with other greases that are very easy to clean off. It was actually quite hard now to clean the little bit of extra grease that was just flying around and that touched the rear derailleur outer shell or the outer housing, to get that housing cleaned up. So yeah, I'm gonna be a little bit more thoughtful in regards to where I place that grease now. I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side, nicely evenly distributed. So now I'm gonna swap out my glove, at least that one, just that I don't touch any other things, and yeah, put that, I guess it's copper that's in here, I don't know. Yeah, but I don't want to put any spots of this on any other components. Okay, so now let's take this bottom bracket. It is actually labeled which side goes on the drive side and which one goes on the non-drive side. So let me quickly find that information. Oh nice, I already see that I had some of that paste on my finger, which is now on the bottom bracket. So this side, as you see, maybe it says drive, so this goes on here. So let's try to install it here. It also has a little arrow in which direction you're actually tightening it. So let's put this in here. I like to just screw it in by hand as far as I can, just to make sure that I'm not cross-threading anything. Otherwise you would feel some resistance, and then you should actually be backing off and trying it again. So I'm gonna screw it in as far as I can by hand, and then we're gonna get the tool in a second. So now let me do the same thing on the other side. And thread it in clockwise as far as I can. I mean, nice that this bottom bracket is now looking like it's golden or made out of copper. So there's going to be a little bit of a cleaning job to be done in a second before we can move forward. That's doing good. So the nice thing with the standard bottom bracket is that it actually comes with this little mounting tool. So what I'm going to do to not damage it, I'm gonna put this packaging actually off the bottom bracket around it. And let's tighten it now to, I think, 40 Newton meters, which is just very, very tight. So feel free to put some anger in this one. Okay, that feels tight. So let me do the other side as well. Okay, okay, that is tight. So let me quickly clean this all up and then we're gonna install the crankset. So exciting moment. Here we got the nice Cybre full carbon fiber crankset with aluminum chain rings, so really, really light. Let's now put everything on a scale and compare it to the Dura-Ace 9100 series. So let's put on the crank arms here with 50mm chain ring. Okay, and that is looking good. So it's 494.5 grams. Now let's drop the Shimano one on here. And we're at 633.9. So let's install them. They're installed, I think, in a SRAM way, with basically this part going onto the non-drive side, and then on the drive side we're mounting this onto the spindle itself. So kind of the other way around in comparison to a Shimano crankset. But yeah, excited to give this a try. So let me grease this one up nicely, and then I'm gonna push it through from the other side, and then I'll see you back on here, yeah, mounting the chainring to yeah, to the through axle. For this one, I'm gonna take some regular grease. I'm gonna apply it through to the axle, everywhere where it's going to be making contact, so especially here in the front and in the rear. So now let's hope I can just easily push this through here. There we go. That's looking good. Spins nice and freely. Okay, so let's install the chain rings. So we're going to put this one on here, and now we're actually going to screw it onto the spindle. All right, so let's keep on pushing it in. All right, so that's looking pretty good. Let me see. So now I can already see that the inner chain ring is dangerously close to yeah, to the chainstays. But yeah, this crankset came actually with a couple of spacers. So now I'm going to take this off again, add some spacers, which is going to push the chain rings a little bit further out, yeah, keeping it away from the chainstay, and then we're going to apply it again, and then it should be perfectly in place. So let me take it off again. All right, so now it's off. Now I'm going to take those spacers and placing them on top of here, and now we're going to reinstall the crank again. Let's tighten it like this. Let's see, it's rubbing against that sticker here. Let's make sure that this is not going to be the problem. Okay, it spins nice and freely. Spacing wise, it looks fine now. Let me quickly push it all the way in. Okay, and now it's looking perfect. It spins freely, so let me tighten it properly. I'm going to do this by hand. Okay, this is tight. And now on the other side we have a little preload adjuster. So yeah, let me quickly turn the bike around and show you. You now see there's this little ring here, which is there for the preload adjustment. So we're going to open up this little bolt here to open it up. Just unscrew this. All right, and now we can actually turn this one and push it against the bottom bracket, so that there is not going to be any movement of the crankset to the left or to the right. So we're going to push it against it, not too tight, so that everything still moves smoothly, but that looks good now. So we get back to the bolt and we tighten this one back in, not too tight to not over. Do not break it because it's metal into plastic, but this is looking pretty nice now. Job done. So let's position the front derailleur. Another thing which is really cool about the SRAM setup is you see this little red tab in here, which is something that you can actually pull out and pull back in. And it is actually there to help you to perfectly space and adjust the height of the front derailleur to the chain rings. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna loosen up that bolt here, and we're gonna move the front derailleur down that exactly it looks like this, that the chain rings of the big chain ring perfectly sit within this little adapter. And once they're sitting there, we're gonna tighten that screw. And now I'm gonna get my torque wrench because it should be maximum 3 Newton meters. So we're gonna do like 2.5, 2.8. And then we're already done with positioning the front derailleur, which I think is a great advantage in comparison to the Shimano setup. Okay, so here's my torque wrench. I set it to 2.5 Newton meters. So let's tighten it to 2.5. There we go. There we have 2.5. We go a little more. So we got 2.8 or something like this, but still lower than 3. So now this is good, and then we can remove this plastic tab, and we got a perfectly positioned front derailleur. Nice one. And now what we can actually already do is take out this little cover and put in the battery. There you go, looking nice. So with that, I would say we're already at finishing touches. So let's put on some nice wheels on here. Then we're going to be installing the chain so that the drivetrain is going to be nice and complete. Then we're going to continue with some nice super lightweight bottle cages and also the nice super light Darimo seat post. And then yeah, it's just going to be about wrapping the handlebars, and then I think we're going to be putting it on the scale and see what the weight is at. So let's go and put the wheels on and the chain. Let's go. So with the wheels, we're going with my nice Elite wheels, drive wheels in the back with a 60 or even a 65 and a 50 in the front. I'm actually having a 12-speed AliExpress super lightweight cassette on here, which is around 250 grams. Let's see if this is going to work. Well, I heard that the SRAM system actually works also with Shimano drivetrain components as long as you pair cassette with a chain with Shimano crank. I mean, this is neither a Shimano crank nor a SRAM crank, so I thought, okay, let's take a Shimano compatible cassette, and then also we have a brand new, freshly cleaned and waxed Ultegra chain that we're going to be installing here. So let me take that block from in between the brakes out. Let's slot in the wheel. Now this slowly starts looking like a bike. Yeah, of course we also have to center the brakes in a second. All right, so now let's go to the front wheel. So let's take the through axle out first, this way. Stopper out here from in between the brakes. All right. Through axle in. Okay, guess this is also, so we'll also have to center the front brake as expected because it's not even tightened. Okay, so now next step is going to be to put the chain on and then see actually if the indexing is actually going to work, because I never tried it out to mix Shimano and SRAM components. I only heard it's possible. So let's find out. All right, so here for the chain setup, I'm gonna go for the small ring in the front and also the smallest ring in the back. Brand new, freshly waxed Ultegra chain. Let me see that it's the right way around. It's always a little bit funky with the freshly waxed chain because it is so stiff, but we're gonna make it work. All right, and now let's guide it through here. Pulley wheel. All right, that's looking good. Still all a bit stiff. All right. So this chain is definitely way too long. So what we want now with being on the small chain ring in the front and the second to smallest sprocket in the back because the derailleur doesn't let me go to the smallest when I'm in the small chainring in the front. So I'm gonna be stretching it just a little bit, that rear derailleur cage just pops out that tiny bit. So I would say that I'm gonna be cutting the chain for now here. So I'm gonna take this part off, and then we're gonna see if that was enough. We can always take another link out if needed. Adding another link is a little bit more problematic. So let's take these out. So for this, we're taking a little chain breaker tool. We're inserting it where we want to be breaking off the chain. Always good to, again, double check to not make a mistake here. So we want to cut it off here at this link. So we place it in our chain breaker and we basically just push one of those pins out that is holding the chain together. There we go. And now we removed a little bit of chain. And now we should be able to install the quick link on this side. There we go. And now we just hook them in together. So now there is this little quick link tool which you use to basically just spread it out and have those quick links interlock. So you're just placing the tool left and right of the quick link and then just pull it off to the sides. It's always a little bit more tricky with a waxed chain because of all the wax in those places. So let's see. Let me stand up for this. Okay. Nice click. Now everything's interlocked. So now, yeah, I would say let's spin the chain a little bit and yeah, let it work itself in. Wear off a little bit of that wax to get a little bit smoother, and then we can look at some indexing. And for best possible performance, we want to get yeah, the upper jockey wheel as close to the cassette as possible, of course without interfering. And for this, we're basically tweaking this little adjustment screw here in the back, which you see is moving the derailleur either further away or closer to the cassette. So let's say like this, should be good. Okay, so let's do a quick indexing check. So go up, 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 up. Almost. Let me go down again. Maybe it was because I was pedaling so slow. Yeah, no, here it's rattling a little bit. Up. Let me go down again. Up. And up. That's looking good. Down, 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 down. It's the same one that was struggling when shifting up. Okay, let me go down again. Down, 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 and down. Okay, and of course there is a SRAM app for this where you can go into drivetrain settings, micro adjust, and then start tuning the offset between yeah, the derailleur and the cassette. So very similar to what you've seen in the Di2 app from Shimano or in the L2 app. In comparison to the L2 app, on the L2 app you can basically do yeah, the configuration per sprocket. On Shimano and on SRAM you can only do it for the whole cassette, which is a little bit of a problem with these super lightweight Chinese cassettes. So they are not perfectly everywhere. You see that most of the steps are actually shifting very smoothly in both directions, while I think between the 5th and the 6th sprocket there is a little bit of an issue of shifting up as well as shifting down. So there must be yeah, a gap difference there. And yeah, on the L2 system I could tweak it just for that extra sprocket to make a special case there. Unfortunately here that's not possible. I'm gonna leave it like that for now. I might actually try it out with an original Tegra cassette, which I have flying around here as well. Unfortunately that's like 100 grams or 120 grams heavier. But yeah, now I first want to finish the bike, and for now I would say that this is going to be definitely good enough for the test drive. I also want to see how it shifts under load, and then I'll do a proper judgment if it's actually worth swapping out the cassette or if I'm going to stay with this one. But before we move on, let's quickly have a look also at the shifting in the front, so the front derailleur settings. Unfortunately I didn't see any settings in the app itself. itself. So yeah, I'm just gonna hope that it's gonna switch smoothly out of the box. Let's see. All right, so let's see how the shifting performance is in the front. Here we have a nice button on the front derailleur itself where you can shift up and down without having to go to the shift levers, which makes it quite nice for setting up purposes. So let's shift down. That's looking good. Shifting down is always easy. Shifting up. That looks good as well. Let's go down again. And another one up. Yeah, a little slow, but safe. And I read that basically the Achilles heel of the SRAM system is the front derailleur shifting performance. So I'm not super surprised that it's not as smooth as on Shimano. But I'm also not shifting that much in the front anyways. So let's go down. And let's go up again. Yeah, that's looking good, I'll say. Good enough for me. And I'll have to check the details on the test ride. So now, before we continue really to the finishing touches being the bottle cages, seat post and handlebar tape, we need to now quickly center the brakes. And if you've seen my other videos, you know this is a favorite tool of mine, which is a disc brake centering tool. So you basically just slot it on top of the disc and push it into the brake itself. You activate your brake in the front and then you tighten the brake screws, and then normally once you pull it out, everything should be nicely and beautifully centered. So let's see if we can make this work again on first try. So now we put this, as I said, on top of the brake itself. And we push it in between the brake pads. There we go. Now it's in between the brake pads. Now we take our torque wrench and we tighten up the bolts, and at the same time we're gonna be pushing down the brake lever. So I'm pushing down the brake lever, and now I'm gonna slowly tighten up those bolts. Not all the way, one after the other. Alright, let's tighten this one properly now. I'm going to 7 Newton meters here just to be safe. I mean, it's metal on metal, so nothing should be happening. Alright, and let me loosen the brake. Let me come back over here. Let's pull out the tool, and no rub. Beautiful. Same thing on the front. There we go. Okay, now let's see. Well, still not perfect. Okay, I'll say another try. Now let me quickly see without the tool, because I have a pretty good clear vision on here through the pad, and I know I can see where it needs to go. So it needs to go a little bit further on the inside at the top. Quite well in place. Yeah, that would be nice. So let's slowly tighten them up. Try to not move the caliper around. There we go. So also possible without the tool. So you see, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I mean, normally if it works on first try. But now, I mean, luckily with this studio light here, it was very easy to basically look at the brake from the front, and then you see where you actually need to move the brake, if you need to offset it to the left or to the right, and then just slowly tighten those bolts up. And yeah, that method worked on first try, as you've seen now. So now let's get those bottle cages installed and move forward. So for the bottle cages, I'm using these super light full carbon bottle cages from AliExpress that also come with 2 titanium bolts. So let me just quickly get some grease, because on some of my last videos I got some comments that I'm not greasing the bolts and threads well enough. So yeah, I'm definitely learning from that one. So let me just take a little bit of grease, apply it in here, and a little bit of grease applied here. This one and this one, trying to push it inside a little bit. There you go. So let's take the first bottle cage. Let's just make sure to pick up all that grease that we placed at the opening here. All right, not all the way. And now we take this one. I mean, these are carbon cages. So you of course don't want to go like super hardcore on the torque here to basically just not break them. But you of course also want them to be tight enough to not wobble around. But this seems like a good compromise here. So let's do the other one. The first bolt and the second one. And again, not too tight, but definitely tight enough that they don't fall off. That's also something that the first test ride is going to show. All right, so it's looking good, solid. So I'd say bottle cage is done, and I think they also look good. I mean, this nice thin carbon round shape kind of fits well with, I would say, the classical tube design. So let's wrap the handlebars. For the bar tape, as with a lot of other builds that you've seen on my channel, I'm gonna go with the Supercars Super Sticky Cush bar tape because it's nice and sticky and thick and very comfortable to ride. So as I'm not the best person to wrap bar tape, I constantly need to go back and forth, watch some YouTube videos in between on how to actually do that 8 loop around there. So yeah, if you want to learn how to wrap bar tape, after this video, have a look at some other YouTube channels that explain this way better than I do. So I'm quickly just gonna throw in a little time lapse of my struggles here. Now to finish things off here on the bar tape side, let me add the unnecessarily heavy bar end plugs from Supercars. So that's the only thing that I really dislike in that set, but those are the only ones that I have at the moment. I'm gonna try to find some of those super cheap plastic ones that you can put in that I guess like 1/4 of that weight. But anyways, let's close things off nicely here. There we go, done. All right, so we're almost there. I'm now gonna remove this janky AliExpress seat post and I'm gonna swap it out for this beautiful extra light Darimo seat post, paired with, so far one of my favorite saddles being the Prologo Dimension 143 in the NAC edition. So it is the lightest version of that saddle, which, I mean, it has some padding, but it also has complete carbon rails. So it is quite light for a padded saddle that size. I might also experiment with a pure carbon saddle, because I was riding actually an AliExpress saddle recently for quite a bit, especially on the trainer, where you're actually not moving that much around, and it turned out to be way more comfortable than that saddle looks. So I might be swapping this out, but let's see. First I want to find out what the overall weight of that build is going to be, and then I can look into further weight optimization, especially after some test ride. So let me quickly remove that seat post and install this one. Bye. Here we're gonna add a little bit of carbon grip paste. So it is like a grease with some carbon particles in there that helps to increase the friction between the two materials, and allows you to not having to clamp things to the maximum torque setting, but somewhere in between, or somewhere lower. So always good to to not compress this rather fragile seat post from Darimo. This is actually a seat post that Darimo repaired for me now twice, because I was using it on my steel bike, and it turned out that, yeah, the whole clamping mechanism was compressing the carbon a little bit too much, making a little bit of damage. So they actually strengthened this clamping area quite a bit. So yeah, I'm very curious how it is going to turn out on on this titanium frame, and if this is also going to be causing trouble or not. But I mean, we'll find out over time. I also heard that it's, even though it looks weird, that it makes sense to swap this clamp by 180 degrees, because you have a little slit here and this opening here, and if both are on one side, it just adds to more load on the side of this opening. So let's see how this is gonna look like with this beautiful Darimo saddle in here. Alright, so I'm actually having a height from the center of the bottom bracket of 77 centimeters. It needs to go a little bit further up. That now looks just about right, and it is pretty much at the clamping limit of where you can actually clamp the seat post. It has 2 indicators of where you can actually clamp it, or where you should be clamping it, which is the strengthened carbon area. Everything else is a little bit weaker and thinner. So let's see that we're still gonna be within regulations. That looks good. 77 it is. So now let's tighten the bolt too. Let me quickly check what the Darimo manual says. It says that you can torque there between 4 and 6 Newton meters. So I'm gonna go for 5, the center. Then we see if we have any seat post slippage during rides. And also make sure that it's straight. There we go. Okay. That looks good. So now the final task, it is going to be straightening the handlebar to the front wheel. So let's quickly do this, and then we can tighten those bolts here, and then it's time to give the bike a little bit of a wash and get all that grease off, and then it's going to be time to weigh it. This looks quite good actually already. Okay, here I'm also going to be tightening to those 5 Newton meters that I used for the seat clamp. 5. Good. So let me give it a quick clean, and then we put it on the scale. I think we're good to finally weigh it. All right, so let me turn on this beautiful Park Tool scale, set it to 0. Let's hang in the bike up here, and we are at 7.77 kilograms. So I think this is a pretty good result, I gotta say, given the weight of that frame. I think this is pretty much in the ballpark of what the Standard Triebwerk did weigh. I need to double check that, but the Standard actually had, I think, slightly lighter wheels back then, because I didn't really have this 60 or 65 millimeter rear wheel. So yeah, I think there are still a couple of weight saving potential areas here, especially for example the through axles. I know that they are super heavy, so maybe something that I want to look into if I find out what the specifications are. But first of all, I need to ride that bike and figure out if it is worth investing more money into still fine-tuning this, or if going custom was just one big mistake, which I hope it's not going to be. So I would say that that's going to be it with this exciting build episode. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit that like button. It's going to help the channel out quite a bit. And with that, as always, I would say thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.